The shuttle doors hissed open, spilling a wave of cool, artificial air into the vast chamber. Captain Elia's heart stepped down onto the polished floor, his boots making a faint echo against the smooth metal. He paused for a moment, surveying the hall, and could feel every eye in the room shift toward him. The space was enormous, far larger than any human-built structure he had ever seen. Towering columns glimmered in shifting hues of blue and green, and a ceiling stretched so high that he couldn't see its edges. The air vibrated faintly with energy, almost like a living thing, and the walls were covered in intricate designs that moved as if they were breathing. Humans had never been here before. Hart knew that. To the countless alien species gathered, he and his small delegation were curiosities at best, entertainments at worst. But Hart held his head high. Humans were not fragile. They were clever, adaptive, and relentless when the stakes were high. He reminded himself of that now, feeling the familiar surge of calm determination that came when he faced danger without panic. At the far end of the hall stood the Queen of the Varin. She was magnificent, impossibly tall, her form wrapped in flowing ceremonial robes that shimmered with colors he had no names for. Her head was elongated, decorated with a crown that seemed to float slightly above her brow, and her eyes glowed faintly with an inner light. She surveyed the assembly with quiet authority, and Hart could feel the weight of her gaze even from this distance. The room was filled with representatives from dozens of species. Some had insectoid limbs that clicked softly against the floor. Others had smooth, semi-transparent skin that glowed in pulses with each movement. Hart noted the tension in their postures. They had seen humans in reports and holograms, but nothing could have prepared them for seeing one in person. Humans were small, yes, but they carried themselves like they owned the room, or at least like they weren't afraid of it. The feast began. Floating platters hovered above the tables, carrying foods that Hart could barely identify. Some of them shimmered like liquid crystals, others released aromas that made his stomach twist with both curiosity and caution. The Queen raised her hand, and the first dish hovered toward her. It was delicate, glowing faintly, and seemed to pulse with a life of its own. Hart stepped forward before she could lift the first morsel. His voice was calm but firm, cutting through the low hum of the hall. "Don't eat that food." "That dish contains a parasitic compound," he continued. "It is harmless to humans, but it will be lethal to you and your species. You will apologize immediately." A holographic projection sprang to life above his hand, showing a model of a Varin body. The sample touched the model, and within moments the holographic queen convulsed violently, glowing veins pulsing in warning. Gasps echoed through the hall. The queen herself blinked, leaning back slightly in her chair, though she did not rise. Hart's words were calm, precise. "If the dish is consumed, it will react with your unique biochemistry. You would die within minutes. I am giving this warning so that does not happen." Humans were supposed to be fragile, weak, and easily manipulated. Yet here he was, standing alone, defying protocol and speaking with authority that no one could ignore. The queen leaned forward slightly, her glowing eyes focused on Hart. For a moment, the tension in the room was almost unbearable. Then slowly she raised one delicate hand. "Explain," she said, her voice low but commanding. "Why do you speak to me in such a manner? Why should I believe you? But if I am correct, your survival depends on heeding this warning. You will not die if you listen," he added quietly. "But if you consume the dish without caution, the consequences will be fatal. I will allow you to demonstrate your claim. Then I have nothing left to lose, but I do not lie about life and death." The holographic Varin convulsed once more, glowing brightly in warning, then collapsed in the simulation. A murmur of horror and disbelief ran through the room. "Impressive," the queen said softly, almost to herself. Then louder, "You may be correct. Continue." He described how it interacted with certain enzymes in Varin physiology, how a single molecule could trigger a cascade of reactions leading to fatal organ failure. He spoke slowly and clearly, knowing that every word mattered. The hall listened, spellbound. By the time he finished, the initial shock had transformed into a mix of fear and reluctant respect. Some aliens whispered of human recklessness, but others whispered of human ingenuity. This small species, supposedly weak, had just prevented the death of a queen, and by extension altered the course of interstellar diplomacy. The queen finally sat back, her glowing eyes fixed on Hart. "You have saved my life," she said quietly. "And yet you have no guarantee of reward, no loyalty to my court. Why do you risk so much?" Others remained skeptical, unsure if it was a trick or an accident. Hart knew that he had earned more than attention. He had earned a measure of influence. The Queen's curiosity had been piqued. For the first time, she considered humans not as fragile pets or subjects to be dismissed, but as a species capable of thought, strategy, and courage. Slowly, the Queen gestured for the dish to be removed. The floating platter obeyed instantly, retreating from her hands. She turned her attention back to Hart. "Tell me more about your species," she said. "How do you survive where others fail? How do you solve problems that seem impossible?" Survival is not about size or strength. It is about understanding the world and using what you know. He could see the mixture of fear, admiration, and disbelief in the eyes of the delegates. Humans had arrived in this room as unknowns, curiosities at best. Now they were something else entirely, a species to be respected, perhaps even feared. As the first part of the assembly drew to a close, Hart allowed himself a quiet moment of satisfaction. He had stepped forward, spoken the truth, and saved lives. But he also knew that this was only the beginning. The Queen's curiosity would lead to further questions, and with each answer, humans could prove themselves again and again. The hall remained silent for a moment longer, the tension easing slightly. Then, as the Queen turned to speak with her advisors, Hart stepped back, blending into his small human delegation. He felt the weight of what had just happened. He had challenged royalty and survived. He had changed perceptions in ways that could ripple across the galaxy. And in the quiet of his mind, he knew one thing for certain: humans were not fragile. Humans were dangerous. Not because they were violent, but because they were clever, relentless, and capable of seeing the truth when others could not. As the assembly continued, Hart's eyes scanned the room, ready for the next challenge. The Queen had questions, the delegates had doubts, and the galaxy had not yet seen the full measure of human potential. One thing was certain: the story of this small species was only beginning. The Queen of the Varren sat in her chair, the soft glow from her robes reflecting on the polished floor. Her eyes, still fixed on Captain Elia's Hart, radiated curiosity rather than anger. For the first time in her long life, someone had dared to speak to her directly, and not with flattery or fear, but with truth. Hart remained calm, his posture unshaken, and the assembly around them shifted uneasily. Some whispered that this human was foolish. Others whispered that he was brilliant. "Tell me about your species," the Queen said finally. "You humans are strange, small, fragile, yet bold. How is it that you survive in so many environments? How do you thrive where others fail?" "We adapt, that is our greatest strength. We observe patterns, learn from them, and apply what we know. We experiment. When danger arises, we do not always fight it directly, we think around it. You do not fear consequence. You have been here no more than hours. Using these, we can understand biology, sometimes faster than a species can understand its own systems. Strength is not only in size. Strength is in intelligence, cooperation, and resourcefulness. We survive not because we are the strongest, but because we are clever. We exploit what we know and adapt when necessary. That is why we are dangerous, not because of weapons alone, but because we use our minds." Then slowly she rose from her chair. Her height was impressive, towering over Hart, yet she did not intimidate him. Instead, she moved with grace as if each step were carefully measured, and gestured toward the Hall of Records. "Walk with me," she said. "I want to understand more." Ancient texts and data archives stretched as far as the eye could see, glowing softly with stored knowledge. The air hummed with energy, carrying the faint scent of metals and something Hart could not name. The Queen stopped before a large, floating panel of lights. "This is where we store knowledge of all species under our observation," she explained. "You have impressed me with your insight. But I am curious, how would your species handle a true threat, one that cannot be solved by observation alone? And if someone tried to kill you, your species? Your words are bold. You are fearless yet careful. You understand limits but do not allow them to control you." Where fear had been before, there was now respect tinged with awe. "Do you always act so boldly?" the Queen asked. Hart smiled faintly. "When it matters, yes. The cost of inaction is often higher than the risk of speaking the truth." "There are factions in my court," she said quietly, almost to herself. "Some wish to see your species destroyed. They see humans as weak, unworthy, a threat to be eliminated quietly. We can survive threats, but not all are obvious. Humans survive by noticing what others overlook." The sheer breadth of knowledge was overwhelming. "You are unlike any species I have known," she said. "Your arrogance is matched only by your insight. Many in my court would consider this insolence. Yet you survive. I do not yet know why I should trust you, and yet I feel compelled to. I ask only to demonstrate that humanity can act wisely and with foresight. They believe humans should not exist, and they have taken measures to ensure their plan is subtle. You may already be at risk. I have never known a creature so small to be so fearless, so calculating. You see threats others cannot, and you act decisively. Perhaps humans are stronger than I imagined. It is thought, courage, and action when it is needed most. Humans survive by observing, thinking, and acting. Sometimes that requires speaking truth to power, even if it is dangerous. We do not always have choice, but we always have action. I have underestimated your species. Perhaps it is time to reconsider. Advisors and delegates who had been skeptical now whispered among themselves, uncertainty mixing with awe. Hart could sense the shift. Humans were no longer a species to be ignored. They were clever, dangerous in a way that could not be measured by strength alone. The Queen stopped before a glowing panel showing the court chambers. I have seen courage before, but this is different. You do not rely on fear. You rely on knowledge. Perhaps your species can be an ally. There are those who would seek to end your presence here. They are patient and they are hidden. Can your species survive such subtle danger? I trust we can handle whatever comes. The hall that had been filled with whispers of human weakness now buzzed with respect, caution, and something else, anticipation. Humans had arrived not with force but with intellect and courage, and in doing so they had changed the perception of an empire. As the first part of the private walk concluded, the Queen turned, her gaze still fixed on him. You have survived by speaking truth when others fear it. Remember this, human. The galaxy is wide and danger is hidden. Your species is clever, yes, but cleverness alone may not be enough. Be vigilant. We survive by understanding them. It was to show that humans could influence, navigate, and perhaps even reshape the interstellar stage itself. The Hall of Records seemed almost alive with energy, the floating tablets glowing faintly in the dim light. Captain Elia's heart followed the Queen of the Varan through corridors lined with archives that stretched endlessly into shadowed distance. Every step he took reminded him that he was walking in a place no human had ever walked before, yet he felt no fear. Humans survived by facing danger and analyzing it, and that clarity kept his mind steady. The Queen's glowing eyes flickered as she spoke softly. The threat I mentioned is closer than you realize, she said. Within my court, there are those who would see your species eradicated. They do not act openly. They work in shadows, manipulating events, influencing decisions. Even now, some of my advisors plot against you. Caution is important, but hesitation can be fatal. It is subtle, but nothing escapes these records if you know what to look for. I see it, Hart said quietly after several moments, pointing to a cluster of communications that seemed ordinary but repeated across several advisors. These individuals are coordinating, but indirectly. They do not speak openly. They influence others to act for them. You understand subtlety. Her glowing fingers hovered over one of the panels. These individuals, if left unchecked, could poison the delegation, frame humans for theft, or even manipulate military resources to trap your species. Humans survive by predicting the actions of others, anticipating moves, and responding before the threat becomes real. If we wait until they act openly, it may be too late. You do not rely on brute force, but on intellect, observation, and courage. It is unsettling to realize how quickly you can perceive danger that my advisors have hidden for years. That is why humans survive where others falter. Humans survive by questioning, by verifying, and by acting decisively when needed. Humans have potential that we have underestimated. Lights blinked across the map, each representing activity, meetings, movements, shipments, communications. This is where the subtle threats converge, she said. If you can read this, perhaps you can prevent disaster. Slowly, a pattern emerged, a hidden network of advisors and operatives working toward a common goal, removing humans from the equation entirely. I see it, Hart said, pointing to several glowing nodes on the map. These are the key players. They are using intermediaries to act so they remain hidden, but their pattern repeats. They have weaknesses we can exploit. Humans survive by staying one step ahead, by turning information into action. We do not confront blindly. Humans survive by thinking clearly, even when the stakes are high. Courage without calm is useless. Calm without courage is paralyzing. Both together, this is survival. You may not be the strongest, yet your influence could be unmatched. Inaction is more dangerous than action. We survive because we anticipate, plan, and respond before threats manifest. Humans do not wait. But know this, if you misstep, if you underestimate the subtlety of this court, your species may pay dearly. Every communication, every transaction, every decision made by my advisors is recorded here. Study them. Find the hidden threads that bind the conspirators. Humans were trained to see connections where others saw chaos, to predict outcomes where others assumed randomness. Here, he said after several minutes, pointing to a series of communications between three advisors. They are using intermediaries, but their influence is consistent. They are coordinating actions to isolate and neutralize humans within the court. Observation is the first step. Action must follow. Humans survive because we see danger before it acts, and we respond decisively. Your mind is your greatest weapon. Humans may teach us a lesson in survival and strategy that we have never seen before. I will introduce you to the subtle mechanisms of this court, so you may observe without drawing attention. Learn well, human. The survival of your species may depend on it. Humans had already impressed her with intellect and courage, but now the test was deeper. To navigate intrigue, deception, and hidden danger in a world far older and more cunning than his own. As they moved deeper into the archives, Hart's mind raced. Each detail mattered, each pattern could reveal an enemy, and every step was a lesson in strategy and patience. Humans survived by understanding the world and using that knowledge to their advantage. He knew one thing for certain: the Varan court was dangerous, subtle, and cunning. But humans had something others did not: intuition, intellect, and the courage to act when necessary. That combination would keep them alive and perhaps allow them to turn the tide of power in ways the galaxy had never seen. For the first time in the Varan Hall of Records, humans were not merely guests. They were players, and Captain Elia's heart intended to ensure that humanity survived and thrived, no matter what hidden threats the court had in store. The deeper they moved into the archives, the quieter the hall became. Floating tablets lined every wall, each one alive with information that seemed to pulse with a subtle energy. Captain Elia's heart's eyes moved quickly, scanning patterns, cross-referencing names and movements, looking for anything out of place. Every species in the Varan court had a trail, even the hidden ones. Humans survived because they noticed details others missed. Every minor anomaly mattered. The Queen of the Varan walked beside him, her glowing eyes observing his methods silently. Hart could feel her curiosity as keen as a blade. She had never seen anyone navigate the court's secrets with such precision, and it intrigued her. "You move quickly," she said softly. "Most species would be overwhelmed by the volume of information here." Observation is about focus. Patterns reveal themselves when you pay attention. Humans survive by noticing what others dismiss. Even small inconsistencies can show intentions, motives, or danger. Nothing is perfect, but humans make the most of information. We find leverage where others see chaos. We anticipate threats before they manifest. He tapped a panel highlighting connections that repeated too often, too systematically. "These three are the core," he said. "They do not act directly, but they influence others. Their network spreads like a web, touching every level of the court." "And how would your species neutralize such a threat without alerting the others?" "Most species would rush to confrontation, relying on brute force. You rely on intellect. It is unnerving. Identify their weaknesses, reveal their intentions, and show me how your species would protect itself." They used coded language, subtle phrasing, and obscure channels to avoid detection. Yet the same signatures appeared repeatedly. Humans survived because they could see what others overlooked. "There," Hart said at last, pointing to a sequence of seemingly innocent messages. "These intermediaries are predictable. They respond to cues, repeat certain actions, and rely on routine. That is their weakness. Humans survive by exploiting patterns, and these patterns are exploitable. The goal is survival, not unnecessary conflict. Humans survive because we read traces, predict behavior, and act before the threat becomes real. Create conditions where they act and then respond with precision. Humans survive by using intelligence as a weapon. Subtlety is our advantage. You could change the course of events without raising a hand. Sometimes intelligence, timing, and courage are enough to outmaneuver even the most dangerous adversaries." He identified moments where conspirators were most vulnerable, during meetings, during communication lulls, and when intermediaries were isolated. Humans survived by exploiting these opportunities, turning small advantages into decisive outcomes. "This is impressive," the Queen said quietly. "You see the hidden threat clearly. Most species would be blinded by the complexity. Yet you navigate it effortlessly. It is unnerving but effective. And you would act without hesitation once the pattern is clear. But know this, if you fail, the consequences could be dire. I have underestimated you, and that may have been a mistake. These are the intermediaries. They act without thinking, believing their actions are hidden. Can your species exploit them? A minor manipulation can reveal their intent, exposing the hidden threat. Precision is key. Intelligence and observation are weapons as powerful as any physical force. Humans survive because they understand the importance of preparation. Are you ready? Show me how your species navigates danger where others falter. Your survival and the survival of your species may depend on it. Every small observation became a potential tool for survival. He identified the intermediaries who carried out the conspirators' will, noting their routines and communications. He traced the flow of influence, mapping it onto the physical movement of personnel and resources. Patterns emerged, subtle but undeniable, revealing the hidden threat before it could act. "This is it," Hart said quietly. "We know who they are, how they operate, and when they will act. Humans survive by using knowledge as a weapon. Timing and precision will neutralize the threat before it manifests. Small, yet capable of understanding complexity that eludes even the most seasoned advisors. Perhaps humanity's survival is assured, not because of strength, but because of intellect and courage." Humans had survived another test, not by brute force, but by intelligence, observation, and decisive action. The Queen's gaze lingered on him. "You have done well, human. The subtle threat within my court is now visible, and your species has the opportunity to act decisively. But remember, vigilance is eternal. Danger may lurk even where it seems absent. Are you prepared for what comes next? Your species, survival, and perhaps the balance of this court, rests on your ability to act wisely and decisively. And humans would survive this hidden threat, turning subtle danger into an opportunity to prove that intellect, courage, and observation were sometimes the most powerful weapons of all." The chamber was silent except for the faint hum of the floating panels. Captain Elia's heart studied the network of conspirators one last time, his mind mapping every detail he had collected over days. Every minor anomaly, every unusual communication, every predictable behavior had been carefully recorded and analyzed. Humans survived because they could see patterns that others missed, and now he had the knowledge he needed to act. The Queen of the Varren stood nearby, her glowing eyes focused on him. For the first time, she seemed almost relaxed, though her natural grace and authority still dominated the space. "You have done well, human," she said quietly. "The threat is clearer now. I trust you to act wisely and to protect your species. This situation is no different. Humans survived by predicting the unexpected, and he had done just that. Once we intervene, the chain will unravel quickly," Hart explained. "They rely on secrecy and indirect action. If the right conditions are created, their intentions will be exposed without endangering innocence. That your plan will work. I will watch, but I leave the execution to you." The conspirators believed they were still operating in secrecy, unaware that every action now revealed their intentions. Within hours, the chain of hidden influence began to unravel. Intermediaries acted as expected, following instructions that led them into controlled situations where their behavior could be observed. Hart recorded every step, ensuring that no mistake could compromise the mission. Humans survived because they acted with precision, and precision was now on their side. The Queen watched from the observation chamber, her glowing eyes tracking Hart's every move. "You are impressive, human," she said softly. "Most species would be overwhelmed, yet you navigate with calm and authority. Your species may be underestimated at its peril." The holographic displays highlighted the actions, tracing them back to the three main advisors. Every detail matched his analysis. Humans survived because they prepared, predicted, and exploited patterns. Hart communicated with the Queen privately, explaining the evidence and the vulnerabilities he had identified. The three core conspirators are now exposed. They cannot act without revealing their intentions further. Your court can confront them decisively, but if you allow them to act openly, they will attempt to eliminate the human delegation. Your species has demonstrated skill beyond expectation. I am impressed. Within hours, the conspirators were neutralized. Their intermediaries were intercepted and questioned, revealing the full scope of their plan. The Queen oversaw the process, her glowing eyes scanning every detail to ensure justice and stability. Hart's analysis had proven flawless. Humans survived, and the hidden threat was removed before it could harm anyone. The Queen finally turned to Hart, her expression one of genuine respect. You have not only identified the danger but neutralized it without unnecessary conflict. Your species is extraordinary. Humans survive not by strength but by intellect, courage, and decisive action. I underestimated you, and I will not make that mistake again. We survive because we observe, understand, and act. That is humanity's way. We do not wait for threats to strike. We anticipate and respond. That is how we thrive. Now they had witnessed a single human identify a hidden threat, manipulate the conditions to expose it, and ensure the survival of both his species and the court. Respect and awe replaced doubt and derision. The Queen walked closer, her glowing fingers brushing lightly over one of the panels. Captain Hart, you have changed the way this court perceives your species. Humans are no longer to be underestimated. Your courage, intellect, and precision have proven that your species can survive and thrive where others would fail. That is why we endure. We will continue to act wisely, Your Majesty. Humans survive by learning, adapting, and preparing for what comes next. That is how we thrive, not just survive. Your species has proven that survival is not only about strength, but about intellect, courage, and the ability to act when it matters most. Now they were a force to be reckoned with, capable of navigating threats, neutralizing hidden dangers, and influencing events without firing a single weapon. The Queen approached him one last time. Captain Hart, your species has changed my perspective. Humans are clever, bold, and precise. Your presence here is no longer a curiosity, it is a statement. The galaxy will take notice. Humans have proven this today. The galaxy was full of hidden dangers and subtle threats, but humans had shown that size and strength were not the only measures of power. Observation, intelligence, and courage could turn the tide of events in ways that no one anticipated. The court's whispers now carried awe instead of doubt. Delegates who had dismissed humans now approached with caution, respect, and even curiosity. The Queen herself had acknowledged humanity's capability. For the first time, humans were no longer outsiders. They were influential, clever, and undeniably dangerous in their own right. Hart paused briefly, looking back at the glowing panels and the silent hall. Humans had survived not because of weapons, not because of numbers, but because of intellect, courage, and precise action. That combination had proven to be more powerful than anyone had expected. And in that quiet moment, Hart knew the truth. Humans would endure, adapt, and thrive, not only in the court of the Varan, but wherever the galaxy dared to underestimate them. Their journey had only begun, but the foundation was clear. Observation, intellect, courage, and decisive action were humanity's greatest weapons. The Queen's words echoed in his mind as he stepped back toward his delegation. Your species has proven that survival is not only about strength, but about understanding and action. Humanity has earned its place here. Humanity had shown the galaxy that being small did not mean being weak. Intelligence, courage, and decisive action could shape destinies, alter empires, and command respect. As he rejoined his delegation, Hart's eyes swept the hall one last time. Humans had arrived as underdogs, dismissed and underestimated. Now they were recognized as a species capable of surviving threats, neutralizing dangers, and influencing events with intellect and courage. The galaxy had taken notice, and humanity's story had only begun.